Very good. I really am glad that you're all here, and together we can really explore this whole area of precognition. I put out a precognition hypothesis, and I'm so glad that so many of you are here and want to discuss that. And as part of that is this wildcard preview approach, so we will indeed discuss both of those. I would really like this to be very informal, so please do ask questions and make comments in time as they come up. Now, this is really being done, all the work that I'm doing and many of us are doing now are being done under the Applied Precognition Project. And our mission is to publicly explore, research, and apply logic, intuition, and emotion to predict future event outcomes, precognition. But this enables participants to evolve personally while contributing to the elevation of global consciousness. So we're thinking really pretty big here. The whole work that we do, and we see this all the time as we get more and more people involved in precognition, there's just something that just keeps opening up. I mean, to even get to the point where you're willing to consider this, you're already more open than most people anyway. But as you do it, you just get more in touch with kind of a deeper subconscious, if you want to call it higher self part of you. And you really do get this sense that you're connected to, not only the future, but pretty much you begin to get a sense more and more that you're connected to everything. Now that's pretty much thinking out of the box. Society very much wants us to stay inside the box, the current paradigm. But in fact, this is thinking outside the box. And we really do have this objective of being part of what we already see as the early stages of a major paradigm shift. I like to call it the consciousness paradigm shift. Precognition is only one part of that paradigm shift. But I'd like to think that the work we're doing here is contributing to that, just simply because we're raising the level of consciousness, and we want to do that with society as a whole. Okay, now here is I think this is pretty generally a precognition kind of point of view. It's the one I have, and let's see if you guys and gals agree. I really do believe we're already at the beginning of a consciousness paradigm shift. I mean, I have this sense that that things seem to be accelerating. More and more people are becoming aware of this. There's stuff going on in the areas of health, other areas. Even the fact that stress is accepted as being a cause of illness is a step forward. So I believe this, and if any of you have other points of view, let me know. But I think this is going, and it's accelerating. Now, one implication of this shift, and I think this is a rather important implication, is that more and more of us are really kind of getting at deeper and deeper level that we largely create our own future using our own free will in the present now moment. It's this now moment that is the thing that we know the most. It's when we do everything. Yes, we have memories. Yes, we can imagine the future. But everything we do, all the power, everything is in this now moment. And we get to create our own future. We are creators of our own lives. That's a biggie. I mean, guys, so now you're responsible for your own life? That's a major kind of paradigm shift. No longer blaming. That's part of this paradigm shift, at least as I see it. And then the issue of free will. Free will, for most of us, is a given. You know, we all try to define it, and I suppose as we discuss further free will, there's going to be kind of discussions, and we may end off getting down to disagreeing at the level of words or whatever. But I believe that we all do know at some level that free will exists, that there are choices we make in the now moment, and we have an ability to do that. In fact, that's part of this creation process of our lives, and it happens in the now. But we also recognize that the past is a very important part of that decision. It's there with us. Things we know, things we believe, are part of the decisions that we make in the now, but yet we are free. Now, we accept these influences from the past, but what about accepting it from the future? Just like a memory of a past incident. Okay, now I'm getting some feedback here. Let me see if I can tell who it's from. Patrick, it might be you. Do you have a speaker? Could you turn off your mic? Okay, yeah, that's better. Whoop. Well, okay. A past incident of some sort of traumatic incident we all know might affect us in terms of some future similar incident in terms of choices we make. And it'll be there. It'll be an influence. In Alice in Wonderland, the Queen makes the following statement. It's a poor sort of memory that only works backwards. Now think about that. The implication here is that you can remember the future, and things that happen in the future therefore can also influence what is going on in the now. Now, in remote viewing, precognitive remote viewing, of course, we see that all the time. Your feedback session influences your remote viewing session. The intellect, your left brain, has a very hard time understanding that, getting that. The right side of the brain knows it's true because I believe it's doing it all the time. And most of us who are remote viewers and who are even open to this kind of know that at the right side of the brain level. Okay, so here's the hypothesis. Your future, and notice I underlined future influences. I mean, when you read this, influences is like a verb. Your future influences your free will choices in your now moment, just as your past does. But future influences is, you know, also like a noun, right? There are things which happen, and it's at this level of influences as opposed to no choice. That's the whole kind of issue here, as I see it. You can get in touch with your future precognition shows that, because that future will in fact be a now that's going to happen from the viewpoint of linear time later in time. And what that means when you get to the later in time, that your past was in fact influenced by that. It's all connected. It's a truly entangled system. And that in fact is why, most physicists now who are interested in this and who have accepted it, which is still a very, very minor fraction of science and physicists, connect this up with quantum mechanics, because quantum mechanics basically says all things are entangled in space and time. And so this precognition hypothesis is connected with that. Okay, anybody want to comment now? I'm about to connect this up with remote viewing and other things, but okay, I'll keep going. This was the remote viewing, precognitive remote viewing session that I don't know, kind of motivated me to have a webinar on all of this and open up the discussions and just try to get more and more people involved in actually doing this in a public way. And what we have here, and I'm going to show this one again, and I think you'll understand it better the second time because I'll tell you now about what the wildcard preview is. But in short, the wildcard preview basically provides two coordinates, two tags, two TRNs. You all come from different backgrounds, but I think you all understand the concept of a tag. And there's one tag here, which turned out to be what we call the group target. This is the group target. And you can see the transcripts associated with this coordinate that matched this target. Okay, the flowery kind of look, the thrusting upward. But then there's also always a second target in this 1ARV protocol. One of these was associated, this happened to be a over or under prediction on a sports game, over total number of points, but it doesn't matter, it could be anything binary. The side that actually happened got this feedback. But then there's the other side. Since we're doing a wagering situation with two sides, there's what we'll call the winning side and then the other side, the non-actualized side. So over actually occurred. This was the feedback for that side. Under did not occur, and there was a wild card. Well, one of the differences of the wild card is every single viewer gets a different wild card from each other, and of course different from the group target, which is here. In this case, the wild card was actually judged by the viewer themselves to be a 6 on a 0 to 7 scale, and I'll show you the TARC scale later. But 0 to 7, the 6 is exceptionally good. I looked at it and I agreed with it. But we always have the viewer do it themselves, and they do it and judge it against their two transcripts. And this was the transcript. So you can look at this, and I think you would agree this is an excellent match. Now, one of the things which is kind of remarkable and I think unique about this wildcard preview approach is that the viewer had the opportunity to compare their transcript with their wildcard. They got to compare both transcripts. Notice this was done before the outcome was known. And they actually sent me a prediction saying that I believe my wild card, which is the non-actualized side, is going to be 942765. Therefore, we knew that was associated with under. So even before the event occurred, the viewer all by themselves made a full prediction. Okay, so I said it one way. Historically, what I have found is I have to say this several ways until people get it. And then once you get it, it sort of becomes straightforward and easy, and you integrate it. I now want to say it another way. This is one ARV, one of the coordinates. So notice there's a coordinate. The viewer, this is linear time this way. The viewer, based on getting a coordinate, generates a transcript. What's the intention? What is the tasking for that viewer? Well, it's describe and sketch your feedback target number one, right? Isn't that what we do in precognitive remote viewing? We're going to describe, our objective is to describe that target. Well, in between this, a analyst judge, a tasker, right now most of us are the same, the analyst judge and the tasker, unbeknownst to the remote viewer, this coordinate is associated with one side of a potential wager, namely, let's say, over. Associated with that is an indicator photo site, okay, say a sailboat. Okay. Now is when the judging goes on. So given this transcript, the remote viewer has done their thing already at this end. We look at it. If we get a really good match, then we would predict that this side, say over, is our prediction based on this. That's standard unitary 1ARV. Okay? Period. And if in fact that happens, this becomes the target. If it doesn't happen, viewers still like to get feedback. We will give them feedback. That'll be their wild card. So they get either this IPS as a target or the wild card. If side one happens, they'll get this IPS, whether or not it was predicted or not. So, so that's their job. That's one coordinate. Well, guess what? We do the exact same parallel thing with the other side, say under. We now look at transcript number 2, which was associated with a different coordinate. If it's a good match, we would now say side 2 is going to be the winner, the under. If under, in fact, occurs, this IPS would become the target. But what if it didn't occur? We want to give feedback. That's the wild card. Now, that's 1ARV in general. The wild card preview, notice I haven't quite yet told you, in the old original wildcard approach, and I don't know if Nancy is with us, but we would give the wildcard and the feedback back here at feedback time. What Nancy Smith basically invented was, since I can choose the wildcard anywhere in here, I don't have to choose it here. She was a group manager. We would also let viewers choose their own wild card. What she came up with was, wait, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. What she came up with was the following. And let's make sure you understand this. This is linear time, just as before. The remote viewer does a session, does his first session, remote viewer for coordinate 1. Remote viewer does the second session. But right here, right now, as an analyst judge, once I receive these sessions, so the sessions are done, I can choose the wildcard target for that viewer. I get another remote viewing pair of sessions in, and I will choose a different wildcard for that viewer, and I will send it off to them. So each viewer is going to get a unique wildcard. They then are now in a position to do something which is sort of remarkable. Right now, they can take and look at their wildcard and compare it to their 2 transcripts, and they can make a prediction on what is going to be the other side, the non-winning side. And I ask them to do that, and they send me their TAR confidence rankings. They're 0 to 7. So you saw an example of that where someone had sent me a 6. After that, I then now notice what I have in hand as a judge. I have in hand their prediction, plus I have their 2 transcripts. And so I now have a great deal of information from multiple viewers, and I do an analysis and judging session. And then I make a prediction, which I share with everybody in the group. Then the wagering goes on. If people wager, some people don't wager. Some people, this process just gives them enough satisfaction and they learn enough about themselves, are happy with that. But now is a time where wagering can go on. The event occurs. The outcome then becomes known. And then you do the 2 feedback sessions where the side that wins gets the group target, the side and everybody in the group gets that picture, and the other side now is known to be the wildcard side, so you know what coordinate is associated with that, and then the viewers can do that feedback session. So this arrow indicates, right, everything is connected from the feedback back to the RV session. Okay, so one last time, in linear time, we have the wildcard preview approach. After the outcome is known, the IPS for the side that wins, that becomes one target shown to everybody, and that gives us a kind of cohesion. And then the other side is a wild card side, right? And each viewer receives their unique wild card target. But it's different from the other viewers. And only after the outcome is known is the coordinate known, even though you get the target earlier. Okay. You got to ask questions now. Did you all get that?
Hi, Marty. It's Gordon. I have a question about this.
Good.
And, you know, I've been on board with this for a couple of months, so I've seen how the process works. The question I have has to do with the fact that is the relationship between target coordinate numbers and the actual IPS, the IPS photo set. And my understanding initially had been that a target number is associated one-on-one with an IPS. Like, for example, in the actual side, it might be 1, 2, 3, and for the wild card, it's 4, 5, 6. And maybe 1, 2, 3 would be a picture of a person, and 4, 5, 6 would be a picture of a house. What's new here that I haven't seen in the courses that I've taken is that there's different IPSs for every wildcard number. Do you follow? Like, yeah, I'm given number 456, and maybe that's for a boat. And maybe Patrick's 456 is a seal. And so how can you have different numbers for different pictures?
Okay, and what you said isn't quite right, so I'm perfect that you asked the question. The way we're doing it, and actually some people don't like that, but the way we're doing it is everybody in the group gets the same coordinate for side 1. Everybody in the group. Everybody in the group gets the same coordinate for side 2.
Okay, yep.
Okay? Everybody.
The same number. The same number.
The same number, the same 6-digit coordinate, or TRN, whatever they want to call it. It's like a tag.
Sure.
Okay. Associated with that coordinate for them is only one target. Associated with this coordinate is only one IPS. There's only one IPS associated with this coordinate.
Right.
But if, let's say this is the side that was actualized.
Okay.
This coordinate, this picture will become the target. Everybody will see that. So you've seen the way the emails come back, and I say this is the group target, and everybody had that coordinate and got it.
Yeah.
Right? This coordinate is now associated with everybody's individual wild card. Nobody sees this. Nobody except me will ever see this IPS.
But that brings up another issue. Maybe this is to do with ARV in general.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if I have, say, that 456, and you have a different 456 that's associated with an outcome that didn't happen, but it could have happened, but you still have a picture there for that associated 456.
Uh-huh.
Isn't it possible that I could be viewing your 456 instead of my wild card?
Is it possible? Yes, and that's part of the displacement issue. There's different ways people displace, and in the military, what they found, and the coordinate has nothing to do with it. It has all to do with intention. They did do that. They would find a whole bunch of people would get the same thing, and it would be wrong, and their working hypothesis was that some of the viewers, some guy was doing really well, and so they would sort of peek at him and try to get the same thing that he did.
Right.
They don't know that for sure. But you could think, and don't please get this in your head, because other people have the same coordinate that's going to be associated with the wild card, that you should peek at their wild card or anything like that. Just don't do that. Your intent, this coordinate is special to, it's your coordinate. You know, in fact, the tasking I say is describe and sketch your coordinate. So it really is personal. Yeah. And one of the things which I do, and I do this when I remote view, is I say the coordinate out loud. Here, when I do the session, and then I say it out loud, and the only other time I say it out loud is back here. And so I see like the vibrations, intending to make this not only personal to me, but personal to me, and I want to entangle with me at my feedback time.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, okay. So,
it just seemed weird to me that, 456, target number 456 should point to the same thing regardless of who's reviewing it. And so there's an assumption here that each person can have their own 456. That's almost like for every head there is a world, that everyone as an individual is perceiving their own 456.
And that is what they should do. This person certainly did do that here.
Yeah.
right? They did their own, and that was their intention, and they carried out their intention just beautifully. I understand what you're saying, and one other person has said to me, why don't I make all of the numbers unique to each person? And believe it or not, many years ago, I did that. It just didn't change anything. None of these things at that level are important. There was a time when I thought it might be, and I did it. But the overriding principle is your intention to be consistent with your target feedback session. Maybe that's the way to say it. In other words, a target is not really independent of you. This is your target.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, as I say, making the coordinates separate for everybody, I understand your point. It's not necessary.
Okay. All right.
Okay, anybody else?
Well, yeah, I look at like 1, 2, 3 is associated with outcome A, not the photo, and just the photo happens to get put in there at some point.
Okay.
And 4, 5, 6 is outcome B. And then in one case, everybody has the same photo. In the other case, we all get individual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. The fact of the matter is, they are all entangled, just the way you said, Catherine. That is this coordinate, your transcript, whatever side it's on, and then your final target are all connected to you, and that's right. I like that viewpoint.
Yeah. And I suppose just to make your point clear, it's something that often occurred to me when I was kind of thinking, when the military used to assign these target reference numbers, I'd think, well, sooner or later they're going to run out of numbers, and how do you know that this number has already been picked by somebody else on the other side of the world?
Right.
Obviously, they can be reusable, I suppose.
That's right. Your intention, even though you don't say it out loud and don't write it down, is to do and describe what you're going to see at your feedback session. And that very quickly becomes clear to everybody. And I believe that's what matters. Some people do believe that what you write down is very, very, very important. I don't. What I believe is very, very, very important is that your intention be absolutely clear. And so writing it down, in detail may in fact help do that. But the point is the intention has to be absolutely clear. And, with all of our talking and all that, I'm hoping I contribute to, helping you get your intentions clear.
Right. Okay.
So, so you guys all buy this philosophy, huh? That the fact that in the future, a whole bunch of people are going to see one target. They're all going to see the group target. That's what we call the win side. And there is this kind of coherence, and that's what we see. We see several members of the group get different parts of the same picture. Some get the same part, but it's interesting that they generally seem to describe different parts of the group target. And then we have this wild card where everybody has something different, and there is no coherence. This is sort of what you'd expect. This is kind of new. But both of these come, notice, both of these come at different times in terms of the event. The group target comes after the event. The wild card target can be predicted, and you see it before the actual outcome is known. But of course, both of these are before you are after you did your remote viewing session. So everything here is precognitive. So you're connected up with your future is sharing information with you, and you guys just accept that, just like memory. So the term future memory resonates well with all of you. Take that as a yes?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Now, gee, you see, the problem here is that we are preaching to the choir in terms of getting this out to society. And I guess this leads me directly to why I'm doing what I'm doing with wagering. And I have no problem. I love working with people who do it just to improve themselves and improve their consciousness and all that. And that's at the personal level. And doing all of this is really beneficial for sort of your personal appreciation and use of precognition. However, that doesn't have the same impact that I believe people who will wager in a public fashion, make money, and tell their buddies about it will have. And I guess the strategy that those of us in app are using is to do good precognition, wager on it, make money slowly, wager wisely, but begin integrating this into our lives in a fashion where we can make money, and we will have no problem letting other people know that this is what we're doing. And I believe this will sort of help manage this paradigm shift. I don't think most paradigm shifts happen without some chaos. I see a word, chaos, here, but I'm not sure it's used the same way I am. Okay. You guys are quiet. Let me go on. I don't know if all of you have seen this TAR confidence ranking scale. I referred to it earlier. I just have a few more graphs, and then I'm going to force you to discuss this with me. This is this TARG confidence level. It looks like interesting. I've got this one in full form here. I have other versions. This one, 0 to 7, this is Russell Targ, one of the guys who was at the beginning of remote viewing, helped name it with Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swann. And he came up with this system and tried to quantify to a certain extent the match between a transcript and a potential target, so or the real target. So 0, no correspondence, 1, little correspondence, and after you do enough of these, you begin to get a sense of what chance is. You know, person says a couple of colors and maybe gets a shape, and there is something that you'd expect to get if you took kind of a random transcript and a random picture, and you'd get some matches. You might get the color black is almost everywhere, the white is almost everywhere. So 2 means you're at the random level. 3, you're beginning to think you're just touching, getting some psychic connection with the target. You've got some correct information, but enough incorrect elements around that you're just at the corner. You got enough of the correct that, yes, the viewer has made some contact, but it's just the beginning. 4, you now go to good correspondence. You have several matchable elements, and there's still some incorrect data. But here, you would be willing to wager, okay? You would be willing, if you're betting, you would say, you know what, I'm willing to bet this wasn't chance. There's too much stuff going on here that I feel comfortable that this is psychic. We use 3.5 for wagerable. This whole thing here is really a language between whoever else looks at the confidence ranking. You're basically telling them by what number you put down how you feel about this. It's not a linear scale. It's more like a bridge dialogue. Those of you that know bridge, when you do bidding, you're trying to share how you feel about your hand in bridge. Here you're trying to share how you feel about the match between the transcript and the target. So 3.5 is wagerable. So as a judge, this is kind of a turning point here, because I'm saying to people, I believe this is wagerable. And a 4, of course, is stronger than a 3.5, but nevertheless, it's still wagerable. A 5, you say good correspondence, and here the key words are unambiguous, unique, matchable elements. We spent a lot of time discussing at earlier webinars and discussions exactly what that means. And you want to know something? You can't define it exactly, but we each have our own sense of that, and we've done webinars where we've had different people come up with different matches, and some people will say, yep, that was unambiguous to me, other people won't. It turns out there are variations of like a half to 1 in here based on your own sense of what unambiguous, unique, matchable means. Does it have to be an exact match to the Eiffel Tower, or is something sort of skinny and triangulish enough? And unambiguous, unique, matchable is most of us would like more than just a triangle. But what if you have a triangle and a structure and tourists? Well, now you got yourself something that might be unambiguous, unique, matchable. That's a 5. A 6, you get up to analytical information. You might actually name the target. There have been sessions out there where people said Eiffel Tower, and it was the Eiffel Tower. Or you might get the function of the target, touristy location. That would be an example of naming the target. But just naming the target is not enough. It also says here relatively little incorrect information. By the time you get up here, you've really made good contact with the target. And then 7 is basically spot on. So that's the TAR confidence ranking that we use. As a judge, when I give back my group prediction to all the viewers, I always give the confidence rankings for both coordinates. So I let them know what I thought about both of the coordinates in terms of all the transcripts. One other point I guess I want to make here, which fits into precognition, and this gets to this idea that you create your own reality, is this concept of remote influencing. Feedback, your feedback session is a very important session. I love to say that precognition begins with the feedback, because here's where you know the truth. Here's where you can take the point of view that in my feedback sessions now, I am remotely influencing myself at earlier times, namely at the remote viewing session time. So this is a type of remote influencing. How else did you get the information to write down on your transcript? You influenced yourself. Well, you can do that in your entire life, I believe. And this is just a marvelous example of that, and seeing how it works and training yourself, etc., etc. Okay, so we've been using photo sites for the feedback session, but I believe, see, this is part of the whole hypothesis, is that everything is connected and you are, in fact, able to influence yourself from what we call the future. Now, photo sites, I guess I do want to say this out loud too, just so you understand. Some people say, you're just using photos. You know, I like to use objects. Well, I like objects too, actually, and a lot of people like objects too. But I want to make clear that when we show photos, we're really doing photo sites, and that means the photo is just a transition to the actual site when the photo was taken, and it's your job, and this should be part of your intention, to describe what is verifiable from the photo at the time the photo was taken. So that's what we mean by a photo site. And 2 independent coordinates. What seems to be important, and this comes from Joe McMonagle and Ed May, and they've been working this for a very, very long time. Ed May took over from Hal Puthoff as a director of the SRI, Stanford Research Institute, remote viewing work, where, you know, a great deal of this work started before it went into the military. And it's this issue of intention, and we've talked a little about intention and attention. You really have to make this important to you. You pay attention to it. That's part of making your intention strong, is you're paying attention to that, you're paying attention to everything that's going on. And then this expectation. And expectation is different than intention. You need to get into a place, and this is why continuing to do this, continuing to talk, continuing to interact with people about this, so that you just take it, get to the point where you take it for granted. Do you expect the sun to come up tomorrow? Yeah, you do. You didn't intend it to, though. You didn't feel that you were part of intending the sun to come up. I mean, there's a difference. And you can get to the point, and I want you to know I'm still working this. I'm at the point now where I really do expect to get our app groups up to the 80% success rate. And I have in me, and I have to keep working it, especially when there's a miss, that 80% level is going to happen. And I work at that. When I get wins, I feel really good about it and say, yep, this is part of the long term. But I'm setting up a mindset for myself, and I have this mindset which allows me to connect up with my future, where that 80% is already there. That 80% hit rate for all the app groups, that's out there. Most of the app groups. I also want to be realistic. 80% is out there. That energy now, I'm connecting up with it now, and I'm in the process of making that happen. Talking to you. Some of you are in the groups. Hopefully some of you will join other groups. Start your own groups. But that's expectation and making it real. And I believe that's work. That's something that you do and increase, you know, part of life. But you see, that fits in with this precognition hypothesis. And it all sort of comes together. Okay, I'm going to give you the deepest level of the theory in words as I understand it. This is non-quantum mechanics, non-any of that sort of thing. So I want you just to imagine if there was nearly perfect entanglement. Entanglement is that quantum mechanical word that they might use with electrons and photons and stuff like that. I believe this exact same idea works with photosites. It works with ideas. It works with all aspects of life. It works with things, and a thing could be anything. So it could be an idea, it could be a picture. So imagine that we have now perfect entanglement, okay, separate from time now, right? Time isn't a factor in precognition because you're connecting up with the future. You're entangled thoroughly with your feedback session here. And notice at feedback time, you do in fact have your transcript. That's what you do at feedback. One of the things is you look at your transcript and, hey, look how well I did here. Gee, why didn't I do better? Whatever. Next time I'll do better. Whatever you do with your feedback, you have that. Well, you're entangling that information somehow back here with your remote viewing session. So this is just a piece of a session and an example of one. Well, where did that come from? How did that happen? Well, here's the model that I use, okay, in my mind for trying to make sense out of all of this as best I can. And that basically comes down to the thing that I like to call the subconscious, your submerged consciousness, your higher self. Everybody's got different words. Some people think of this maybe as being a guide that is sharing information across here. But the point is that deep within you, your inner self, your subconscious, is connected through time. It's not your conscious intellectual self. It's something deeper in you that has access to what can be called the universe of collective consciousness. This happens to be very, very similar, maybe even the same as what the Jungians call the unconscious, the collective unconsciousness. It really is the same thing, and that actually surprised me. I thought that they had different image, but the more I'm talking to a friend I know who's in this, they say it's basically the same thing. But there's all this information which is out there, past, present, future, eternal. Your sub has access to it, and this is how that connection is made. There's a kind of entanglement energy which is set, motivated by intention. And this is how this information is basically shared. And then finally, all of us involved in this, the remote viewers, the analysts, judges, the group managers, this is fundamentally, I believe, a personal journey. Each of us creating our own life in a way which I believe is very, very positive within a group environment. You know, one of the things that we do all know is there are other people out there that share basically the same consciousness capabilities with us. And yet each of us has our own unique life. Each of us has our own unique set of now moments. All those now moments together make our life. And my life's different than your life. But it is a consciousness journey, and that indeed is fundamental. And what comes up in this now conscious moment comes up from your submerged consciousness. Okay? And I do believe optimistic, positive, grateful. Grateful is important because it has automatically a sense that you're part of something which is bigger than whatever it is you're thinking of. You're being grateful for being here, being connected with this something bigger, the universe or collective consciousness or whatever, but you're grateful for this. And this idea of self-actualization, you're creating your own life, you're self-actualizing. You're not going to gurus anymore. You're not expecting a guru to give you the information. This computer is down. You know, the people that give you information, I think the teachers are marvelous, but most of us have listened to them. Most of us have picked up by now. By the now you get to where you're thinking about joining a group like this, you must already have a sense of being part of something a lot bigger than yourself. You have your own sense of the eternal. And it's time for you to pick up this self-responsibility. You just have to stop blaming. You can do it yourself. You can figure it out yourself, that sort of thing. And then this quote, our duty, which I thought was pretty strong, but that's pretty strong, as men and women, is to proceed as if limits to our ability did not exist. That we, in fact, are almost infinite compared to the way we usually think of ourselves as you know, small. But our duty as men and women is to proceed as if limits to our ability did not exist. That's incredible. We are collaborators in creation. We're doing this all together. We are building this universe of collective consciousness in our now moments. I'm done.
You did good.
I have I have a question, Marty.
Please.
Okay, it's one thing I don't understand about ARV or unitary ARV is how these targets are cued. Like, how do you actually cue the targets? How is the association made?
How's the association made? I have on a spreadsheet a collection of, at any given time, between 5 or so up to 60 random targets that I pick up during my life.
Okay.
And they're what I consider to be good targets. I have them associated with numbers. One, I think I have 66 now, was the most I ever put down, so whatever. Then it's time for me to set up a tasking. Have you seen any of my tasking emails? Yeah, are you in one of my groups or not? I'm sorry, Gordon.
Yeah, I am in one of your groups. I'm also in Patrick McDonald's group. He's taken over Verve.
Right. Okay. So let's just look at one of my tasking groups here, and I'll show you exactly how I got this, because it is worth going over. Okay. We just named one of the groups, so you see this. Typically, the tasking is this, so you understand the tasking queue with the two
this is what I
coordinates.
do at my end. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Now, what I've done by this time and I just don't want to show my spreadsheet, but you can imagine this. At this time, and give me a little space here because I've actually done it different ways, but it's easiest to understand by saying that at this time, I have a random number generator, and I can show you that.
Yeah.
Wait, it's not that one. It's, oops, that was
You
okay.
have an
I have a random number generator right here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm clicking F9.
Oh,
and
built-into Excel spreadsheet. Oh, that's cool.
Okay, so this is where I get the two coordinates.
Right.
Notice down here, it's 62 pictures. I'll go right here, and I would go to picture 22, which is in my future IPSs right here.
Yeah.
And I would go to picture 22, and that would be the target I'd actually associate with over. I always make sure over turns out to be the first number up here, but notice it'll sometimes be a lower number or a higher number. In the stuff that you get, I always put the lower number first. Anyway, you know, as a group manager, you have to have all these details worked out. And I've set up a system which feels comfortable to me. As a group manager, that's what's key, is you feel comfortable. So I get the first target. I then do this again the second time. I get another target. But now I don't automatically use it. I bring in what I know about ARV, and my being a judge and you being remote viewers, I want the second target not to be too similar to the first one.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? If the first one was a waterfall, I don't want the second one to be an ocean liner or a guy skiing, water skiing or something like that. So then what I do is I then look at, if 48 is not acceptable, I then go through the rest of all of my, all the way down to 62, back up to 0 until I find one that's different. That will be your second IPS.
Okay.
Now, what about the wild card? That's the only other target. You're asking me what I do. For the wild card, as soon as I get a person's transcript, I then do one of two things, which is interesting, and this is what I'm doing now, is I either go back here and choose another random coordinate and look and make sure it's different than the two IPSs. And I do that for me more than anybody else as a judge. But also I like to keep them different because the remote viewer is going to see the wild card as well as one of these two, right? Whichever one is the group. But sometimes after I look at what these two are, the targets, because I want to make them different, I might come up with a word or a phrase or something which I think is different, and I'll just go into Google. And I will put that word into Google, Google Images, and I will find an image that I think is both a good remote viewing target and reasonably different than these two.
Okay.
So,
but I guess my question was, well, thanks, but it's like, how is the target actually cued? You know, I mean, like when I took an RV course, it'd be like very specific. You know, transcript 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is, you know,
I told you I don't.
Match / between rounds, condition of Muhammad Ali, you know, something like that, something that's specific. So I don't understand how you actually turn it into a phrase.
This is it. In other words, I don't do the same thing that you were raised in the dames, those approaches. They believed the writing of the intention was extraordinarily important. I don't believe that. I believe having your intention be extraordinarily clear is critical, very important. The words I use are as simple as this. And in fact, I think this says exactly what I do want you to do. Your intention should be to describe and sketch your, okay, that's what makes it sort of personal. Here's your TRN, what you would call a TRN.
Yep.
Feedback target. What actually, I'll argue that that's as clear as anything that you would put together once you understand it. What else is there for you to do as a remote viewer? I could actually say, and I once did, but it got too wordy, feedback photo site target. But every now and then I do things that aren't photo sites. You know, I'll fool around with objects, or I fooled around with words as a target. But why isn't that clear to you? Why isn't that acceptable to you?
Well, that is because that's what I do at my end. But how you define those numbers at your end is you just fill out an Excel spreadsheet so that you have those numbers, and then you would associate it then to a sporting event on your Excel spreadsheet. And
yes.
That would define it. And that's all, as long as that association is on a row in your Excel spreadsheet, that would define it?
Yep. And that's exactly right. If I were to show you that, it would have right at the very top. Well, you've seen some of the yellow things that I send back to you. That comes right from my spreadsheet. I keep the CRs on my spreadsheet. Everything's on my spreadsheet. But the tasking I use, if you want to think of it that way as being the level up that the tasker does, which you in the, I know Dame's approach, you never see that. I guess it would be my spreadsheet. If you want to think of it that way, you certainly can.
Yeah. Yeah. So if somebody was going to do this on their own, do an ARV on their own, or if you were going to do it on your own with any other viewers, would you just do the exact same thing? You would just write that in on your Excel spreadsheet and then say, that's it?
I've got 5 groups. That's what I do.
Could I take another look at that Excel sheet again? Just take one more look at it.
Oh.
Is it gone now? Or?
This one? Yeah. In fact, here, you can see what I do. Here's my random number generator. This is something else. In fact, I'll tell you something else which you'll be interested in knowing. You see that 13? This came from a series of 13 baseball games that were possible. Which one do I choose? How do I even know what sport to choose? Well, I decided I want to do baseball games or I do basketball games. I do make that decision. Then I look at what all the possibilities are, and then I hit my random number generator and I take the 11th game. I don't want to have to get emotionally attached to any of these games. I like to make as much of it as random as possible. I don't care what I'm wagering on.
Okay,
the primary thing here is to get the targets described well.
Okay, so how does that...
And then here are all the different groups. So I've got one individual sheet for each individual group. In fact, I have a template here. Let me see if my template has anything that might help you. Yeah, here's a template.
Okay, so does this say an actual sporting event?
Well, I would. This is a template. In fact, if somebody like you wanted to start a group, I would send them this template. See, and then what I do is over here, I would find a picture and I'd input a picture. If you were to look at these, there'd be pictures here. And then I take this one down here and I move it down here and then I put the second picture here. So on this spreadsheet, as it develops over time, next thing I do, first I do the coordinate, then I'll get the pictures. Then I wait for the transcripts to come in and then I write comments, my comments based on the transcripts of the different people.
Right. But at no point do you ever do something like, okay, 1, 2, 3 is if the total points scored in this NBA game is greater than this, da-da-da.
I don't believe in that. No, I don't do that. Period. I do not do that. I do what I've now told you. I do not believe that step is as important as Dames makes it. I believe being clear, and I think that's the purpose of what Ed did. That's the purpose of it. And I think people like Russ Targ and those people, they tend to agree more with me. It's setting a clear intention, and you don't need to write all that stuff down.
Okay.
But you can debate it if you want to, but I do not do that.
Yeah. But I noticed in this sheet here it says for 2013 NBA. So at some point you have to randomly pick a game. So you'd have to pick one. Well, aren't that many games left? They're in the playoffs now. So you just pick whatever. How do you pick an actual game? Is that randomly done? And
Yeah, here. That's what this is. In other words, I did baseball on this particular, the last time I used this, I think there were 13 choices. There are a lot of baseball games being played now. And then I just hit my F9, and then I would choose game number 2.
Okay.
In the list off of ESPN, they list all the games on a given day.
Yeah. And then that's it, you're just done. And then you just say, describe, sketch the whatever target numbers, come up with this. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So that's the procedure. I'm really glad we went through this, because I'm doing everything I know how to encourage other people to start their own groups with their own people. I invite all of you to join one of our groups, but even better would be for you to, working with people that you know, to start your own group. And I'm happy to help you in any way I can. But I would like you to do that under app, where as you do it, you keep your data. You're in this for the long term, and you now generate a record.
Okay. Yeah, but it's interesting that this points to is just what a move, how it's mostly just a moving target kind of a thing. It's kind of like, what Ed Daines, as he said, would state that this is absolutely important, that you need to be so meticulous about how this is worded.
Right.
That maybe that's not really necessary, because all you're doing is writing out words in the English language on a piece of paper. How does that make it so? You may as well just fill out an Excel spreadsheet. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But you have to get clear.
Yeah.
Right. And on this. So, okay. Anybody else?
I had a question, Marty. This is Scott.
Shoot.
I agree that saying that the real target is the picture that you email or whatever is less ambiguous than describing who's going to win a sports game. And I can see how giving people their wild feedback earlier, even before the game starts, is good for giving early feedback, and students like that, and they improve faster that way. But how does the wildcard session help you judge things and eliminate or reduce the bleed through or the ambiguity that can happen between the target that represents winning and the target that represents
Right. Okay. Let me see if I can answer that. First of all, let me just acknowledge up front, I don't know for sure why, but I'll tell you what I think. But let me make one other point. I just want us to get our language the same. What you were referring to is called displacement, not bleed-through. Bleed-through is a type of displacement, but it's actually a good type of displacement where it helps you, and I just don't want to open up all of that now. But let me answer your question this way here. This is the one where I think it's got, okay. In the wild card approach, what you have is a higher kind of interest level, I believe. The people that get into this really like the fact that shortly after they do their 2 sessions, they do not have to wait a relatively long period of time. You know, usually it's a day or two, sometimes more, depending on when they choose to do their sessions, until they'll get the feedback. If you do it in the normal way. Now, while they don't know what coordinate it's associated with, they immediately get a target back. And it's a target back before they get the outcome. So not only are they sort of have an interest level in doing that, they go back and they now look at both of their transcripts versus this target. And they can be making their own prediction. They can begin to see how well they think they did. I mean, is there really a good match to one or the other? And hopefully there will be. As they do this more and more, I'm actually beginning to see better and better matches because they're kind of expecting it, I think. I don't know. Things just seem to be getting better. And doing it early here is part of that because of the interest level. In addition, in time, now the subconscious, gets to make these connections, but notice in time there's now a really clear separator between the wild card and what's going to be the group feedback. And I believe that might actually enhance the hit rate in this system. And I can't tell you why. I will tell you that I'm in a conversation with James Spottiswoode. He understands quantum mechanics far better than I do. Even though I'm a physicist and I've studied it to a certain extent, he just understands it better than I do. And there are some experiments out there where I'm beginning to see an analogy to, and most of you have probably heard of the two-slit experiment where they'll set a light beam through two slits and it makes an interference pattern on a plate at the back end, a witness plate.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
The scientist's intent affects which way the electron goes.
That's right. And if you cover up one, you don't get it because you know exactly what the answer is. I am beginning to see an analogy there in that this is very much like the front end where there are two slits. And this is the witness plate at the back where you're witnessing your actual target. And quantum mechanics, of course, says all of that is coupled, and the magic of whether it's a particle or a wave is somehow buried on the details of what you do in here. Do you block one of the holes? Do you not block one of the holes? And they're just starting to do some advanced quantum mechanical experiments where they actually put, and maybe I should send out a link to this to people, but they actually put some rods in there to interfere with the light or the electrons. And does that affect stuff here? I just can't verbally, even if I had the picture, I couldn't really do much better than what I just did. The point is they're experimenting in this interesting range between where the light comes in and where the individual photon or electron is witnessed. And I think somehow by doing this here before the event, okay, and before the final witnessing of everything, we're doing something here. The subconscious may like that. The subconscious may be able to use that to its advantage. And I do believe thoroughly that the subconscious is your friend. You need to view it that way.
And how do you use this this wild card, the results you get on each individual wild card, how does that influence what game you predict?
Well, it influences whether I predict over or under, not the game, but I mean the game is all chosen here, but it's very important in my judging because
Who wins the game?
right. So I'm sorry, what did you say again?
I meant who wins the game, not choosing
Yes,
which game.
exactly. That's where the judging goes on. And so here I am as a judge, and I have 2 transcripts in hand, plus I have the wild card, and I have the viewer's prediction of the wild card. Generally, some viewers, believe it or not, don't want to do this, and they don't have to. But most of the viewers are doing this now in my groups, and I have all that. So I'm sitting here as a judge, and I get to look at the transcript. I compare it to the 2 IPSs, and I can compare the 2 transcripts to the wild card, and I can see how it all comes together. God, I wonder, I think it's going to be worth doing this. Let me show you one. Let me show you one. Which one? Okay, I'm going to show you one here. This was options trade, one of the groups, the financial groups that we did. Here are 3 people that submitted transcripts. So this is one that's done, so I don't think it can do any damage, right? Here is a coordinate. It was associated with up. It happens to be an option rather than a sport event. What I do is first I rank the transcript against, now notice I made this small, and that's because this was not actualized. I used to get rid of it, but Tom Atwater wants to keep this for the record, so I'm keeping it here. But this was another IPS just like this. It was big. From the transcripts, I write the comments that I think are supportive of it, and I give a CR for that. So I actually do a ranking for all 3 for this transcript, and I got 3.5, 3.75. I then do bleed through. Now notice for the bleed through, now bleed through is a type of displacement. And here the viewer, Russ, said that he gave 4.25 as a bleed through, which means for the other coordinate, he got a very good match, enough to wager on this one. So that's where bleed through can help you as opposed to hurt you. And he gave that 4.25. So that's where that number comes from. So I do that myself. He happens to be a self-judger. So either the self-judger does it or I do it, but I'll get rankings for bleed through. Then I look at the wild card, or if I got self-judging information, I might just use the self-judges one. I'm still sort of fooling around with that. Sometimes I just let this, I like actually letting people self-judge. I trust my viewers and I just use that, but sometimes I'll look at it myself as well. I end off with this kind of matrix here. I then give, for this first coordinate, final numbers. So I gave a 4 based on this, a 3, a 3.5, and I come up with the 3.5 here, which is there. So that's how, in this case, there was a 3.5. This one was marginal, but strong enough I was willing to wager on it. This was a 2.5. So hopefully that answers your question. I mean, this is exactly what I do.
So how did the wild card influence? How did that influence you?
Notice if I hadn't had this 4.3 here, see this 4 point, my wild card, well, that's BT. I'm sorry. That was a BT in that case. In this case, the wild card was only a 3.5. Okay? So it was a 3.5 here. So it assisted in this becoming a 4. In the example that I gave you in the presentation, okay, so you understand this table now, right?
So it reduced your confidence because the 3.5 score was lower than 4.3.
Well, no, it was part of allowing me to come up with the 3.5 or the 4 for there. Here, but here's the answer to your question. In this case, there was a wild card of a 6. So imagine a 6 in that table. Okay? You could see how I would then increase the prediction for the winning side, because this is on the other side, and indeed that's what happened.
So is that just supposed to tell you if that person is hot this day, or because it doesn't have anything to do with the winning or the losing of the game, right?
No, it has everything to do with it. God, okay, let me see if I can find this one. Wait, let me see if I can find this one. This was the 1ARV protocol. I mean, it's really important for everybody to get this, and I always have trouble.
This is my first time.
How far back does this go? What was the date on this? 5/14. What group? Oh, it's a December group. Okay, here it is. So notice here, I only had 2 viewers, okay, but here is where the 6 was. Here's where the viewer 4942765, this one, which was over, said, you know what, I think that is my wild card, and I'm going to give it a CR of 6. They said it for the other. Remember, the wild card goes with the other. But I put it here in my spreadsheet under this coordinate, since if that's the other, it doesn't take a whole lot of logic to know if this is on the not win side, this must be supporting the other side, which is the win side. So in this case, this was supportive of under, and that's what we actually wagered on. Now that I'm looking here, I can see that. And so this 6, in fact, it was only this 6 allowed me to go this way and say, well, that's pretty darn strong. He also happened to have a 3.25. I wasn't willing to wager on it alone here, but the wild card was strong enough. I gave him a 5 as my total ranking for Tom alone. In other words, if all I had was his transcript and I saw that wild card for the other, I would have said a 5 for his under, which is strongly wagerable. The other person was a 2.5. This one was low. It's a 2.5. Notice I only gave myself a 4 because the 2 together as a group was only a 4. So even though there was a 6 here, I gave a 4 here. And this is when I set out the prediction for under 180. What I give in an email as a prediction is that. That's what goes out to them as a prediction. And I even put in this case it was based on a wild card. And this turned out to be a hit. Okay, so does that answer your question? So the wild card is very important. In this case, it was the determining factor. In the earlier example, it wasn't the determining factor, but it was a factor.
Okay. All right. So it can support deciding that you're going to pick the other target.
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes these are high. Sometimes it turns out that the basic transcript is high. So we've put together a system which I call redundant. I try to get as much information as I can from the viewer in different ways. And I believe that's really the strength of this approach.
And there were each of these viewers did 2 RV sessions, or was it 2 RV
Yep.
sessions plus a wild card? Just 2.
No, now wait. You have to understand each of them did 2 RV sessions, period. And they did 2 feedback sessions, period. For this coordinate and its transcript, they got this back as feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Right.
No,
Later, after the game.
feedback. This one after the game.
Mm.
For this coordinate, this was the feedback for Tom. Jane had a different wild card. I don't even know what it is anymore. So there were 2 targets only given to Tom.
Mm-hmm. And Tom got his, and the wild card got back to him before the game.
Before the game, he made a prediction on which coordinate it was. He predicted it was 942,765. That's what he predicted, and it was here. And then when he got his feedback, he knew it was associated with this. So then he said, yes! But he had predicted it earlier, but now he knew it for sure.
Right. And since each of them got different wild card targets, it's less likely they're going to draw
Do a displacement of any sort, correct.
Interesting. I can see how that would increase the accuracy, at least on that target.
Mm-hmm.
At least for that session.
Okay.
As a group.
And each case is a little bit different. You know, as I say, sometimes I've had a case where it was the bleed through that was the determining factor that allowed me to feel comfortable wagering. More often than not, it's still the straight transcript though, and that's the cohesion part. Notice this was one viewer. See the slightly different color around this one versus this one? I only had 2 viewers, but one gave me this and one gave me that. But there were other times where the straight transcripts are just so good that, and the wild card might be moderate and the bleed through might be moderate. But everyone is a little bit different, and as a judge, I have to handle whatever I get.
And when you say bleed through, you mean the similarities between
bleed through is when a person gives a good description of the other target. And in binary, that usually means it's wrong. Here, it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. Okay, if you guys aren't getting tired, I'll actually show you. Oh, no, I can't show you. But, well, I can, but it's going to take a while. This is my summaries. I don't know if you've ever seen these. These are all of my summaries for the hits. When I get a hit, I put together summaries like that. In fact, there's the one we've been using. These are all the others. Okay, here's an example of where there was bleed through. Though I said it, though I don't see it there, so that's not a very good example. Let's find a better one. Okay, so here's bleed through. You see this little shape here?
Yeah.
That's this shape here, this shape here, this shape here. In this case, this was from the straight transcripts. Bright, outdoors, shiny, okay, energetic. You know, you can see how this would be supportive of this, and maybe it would have been enough to say, hey, this is the one you should go through. But in addition to all this kind of stuff, a caldera and all that. I got vast, wide, enormous, gigantic, mountainous, speed very slow, burnt, burning, orange, cranberry yellowish. I got stuff which was not supportive of this coordinate, but, well, was in the transcript for the other coordinate. It was supportive for this picture. Okay?
Supportive for both.
No. No. Let me say it. No. It was only supportive of this picture, but it was in the transcript associated with the other coordinate.
Right.
Okay? So it was a type of displacement, but because we're doing unitary, and because I made the assumption that they were going to see this one, because this would be the winner, how else would they get this description? So this is the group target, but the person happened to put that information in the coordinate associated with the other.
Okay, so it's unary. So you only had one. You didn't have two. You didn't have one picture assigned to the winning team and one to the losing.
That's right. That's right.
This was
That's right. From, even though he put it on the losing team's transcript, I say, hey, how could he get it? Because I know he wouldn't see the IPS from the losing team's transcript. The only way he sees it is from here. And so that was supportive, and that made this work. So this is displacement is your friend idea. And I gave another whole webinar on that.
It's further corroboration, yeah.
Let me show you.
Hey,
It's further corroboration.
Exactly. Okay. Was that you, Deborah?
Yeah, maybe you could, it sounds like some of the people here are really very new to this. Can you maybe provide a link to a webinar that you've already done explaining the whole process? Because I know you have several. Maybe that would be helpful so you don't have to.
Yeah, if you want more details, that's a good idea. Let me go and let me point you to here. I'll show it to you, and then I'll put it in the chat box.
I had a couple of things I wanted to share that would speak to what you were bringing up at the beginning.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, ask questions. Let me just point out to them, the details of a lot of this is here, and there are lots of links here. And I think displacement can be your friend, for example, is here. And that's a webinar I gave. So you can get a lot more information from that link. And you can send me emails. I am an email guy. Feel free to ask me questions anytime. Okay, go ahead, Deborah.
I was going to say, too, that this process, this whole system really does take a long time to learn. So anyone who's confused or frustrated, there really is a lot involved, but really, I always just come back to the idea that as a viewer, all I'm doing is receiving my targets, doing my session with the idea that what I'm viewing is what I'm going to see at feedback time. And if you don't understand anything else about this whole thing, so sometimes I think it helps to just tell yourself, I don't care about any of the other stuff. All I'm going to do is do a session, and I'm doing it to see what I get at my feedback time. And that can kind of simplify it, and then you can start understanding all these nuances as you go along. But I just wanted to, I was really excited about this topic today, Marty, because this has been really so much a part of my own life. And whenever I've used the concept that the future can influence my past, I was just going to share one example. When I was writing my first book, and I was very nervous about being able to get it published or if I would be able to ever get it out to the bookstores, I would go to the bookstores and I would stand in front of the shelves and I would imagine my books right there in the exact section I wanted it to be in, and I would send messages to myself in time, like I would send message to my future self congratulating myself that I got the books into the store. And I did this several times, and then once my books were written and published and in the bookstores, I would then go and stand in front of the shelves. Like, I'll still do this. I'll go to the store, I'll stand in front of the shelf, and I'll send a message back to myself in the past, thanking myself for having listened to myself in the future. And so I think it's the same concept here. And so what I've just started recently doing is during my feedback session, not only am I comparing the transcripts and to my sessions to see what I got right or wrong, but I'm starting to send a message back to myself when I was doing the session and just talking to myself in the past doing the session. And so it's working that same concept, but I'm looking at it as I'm actually communicating with my past and future self. And it seems like it's strengthening that connection that you're talking about.
Deborah, that is beautiful. All of that. That is wonderful. Hey, you be sure to share that at the conference workshop in Vegas, okay? I'll have to make sure that comes up, because that is a beautiful connection on how it should work here and how it works in the rest of your life. I mean, I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Did you guys all kind of get that?
Yes, that was great.
Yeah.
Like you said, that's a form of remote influencing.
Yeah.
Well, and you can also use it as therapy, because I had this realization a long time ago. When I was just in junior high school, I was having a really hard time in my life. Like, my life was really miserable. And I would sometimes have a sense that, like, I would hear something like a voice telling me it's going to be okay and things are going to get much better for you. And I always wondered, like, well, what is it that's telling me that? But that's what helped me continue on. And I realized later, I had a sense later that it was maybe my future self. So I've kind of done like a therapy with myself where me now will send a message back to that self in junior high school and say, yes, life is so much better now. And I'll talk to her, and then I'll have her talk back to me. So it's the same concept, and I think maybe it is possible that that is who I heard, myself now talking to myself. So keeping with that concept, I can move forward in my life. If I'm having problems right now in any area, I can start a dialogue with my future self that's going to even be more prosperous and happy and have more of what I want in the future.
That's beautiful. And let me extend this to one other area that I think it makes sense to consider, and in fact even do, and that's health. Imagine if you're having health problems and you go to a time when in fact that problem is solved and you're feeling healthy. Communicate with that future self. So the same idea, and I believe all of this is going to be part of this new paradigm that we're moving towards. Okay. This was good. I'm beginning to feel like we're winding down. Unless anybody... Hey, Missouri, I want to hear from you. I know this is your first time. How did all this go for you?
It was fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
I listened, I observed, and I gained a lot of knowledge. I found out a lot more about myself. It pulled a lot of things together, what you said, and especially what Deborah just said, because I've lived my life in a certain way, and it pieces together. You know, you have the rough edges. You always have rough edges you have to go through, but on a positive level, it pieces together, and the outcome is what I manifested to be ahead of me. So as a child, my mother had always said, you can do whatever you want. You can have whatever you want. She never said, don't let anyone get in your way. She always said, don't let anything get in your way.
Mm.
She said it might take a little bit longer, but don't ever give up your dreams. So that's how I've lived. And I've pretty much got everything I ever needed. It took a long time and a lot of hard work. But it goes with everything you say here when you pull it together.
Well, that's terrific. Thank you. And I hope you, any other newcomers want to comment? Getting ready to close this out here.
Marty, I just want to throw out a positive review for a book I picked up on remote viewing, because I was finding where my Ed Dames training had been lacking, and so I was out searching, and I picked up a book by David Morehouse that I thought was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I really did. I'm glad I bought it, and I'd recommend it to anybody who just wants to learn or expand their skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are several good books out here. I know a lot of people like Morehouse. He's still out there and does workshops occasionally.
Yeah. What's amazing is that so many of these guys, the protocols are different. I mean, how could they come from the same military background and show up with different protocols years later?
Hey, let me tell you this. After you've done this for a year or two or three, I bet your protocol will be different than it is now, too. Every single viewer introduces their own nuances and stuff like that into it. So it just happens naturally. And I think it's as it should be, because this stuff is very personal.
Yeah, but a lot of it just seems that you make them, it changes itself instinctively as you're going along.
That's right. Trust your intuition. Hey, that's ultimately what this is. Your inner self, your subconscious. Submerged consciousness. I like that for subconscious. Well, you newbies, I do hope you will stay involved now with app in some form or another. Send me emails if you're interested in joining a group or starting your own group. You are obviously all welcome, and I encourage you to come to Las Vegas if you can for our conference June 19th to 23rd, or join the webinar. I think you all know. I'd
love to go to that, but I can't. I got something going on here.
I understand, and we will eventually put the webinar online, so it will be recorded. So you will have that as another option. Who knows how long that's going to take, though.
So you're going to post what you do in Vegas there, and did you record today? Are you going to post that also?
Yeah, we'll post today, and I'll post the webinar portions of the conference workshop. So, hey, look, my aim here is educational. So we want to educate as many people as possible. So all that information will be available. But there's still not going to be anything like rubbing elbows with Joe McMonagle and hearing Dean Radin talk. I mean, I feel so good that we were able to bring that together, and then actually doing it with other people. We'll be doing 3 baseball games, predictions all the way through. So especially for newbies, this would be really good, and it's going to be a lot of fun, probably more than anything else. We're going to have a lot of fun. Any other comments, questions?
No, but thanks a lot for all you do, Marty. Thanks for your time.
Well, you're certainly welcome, and as you probably have picked up, I do enjoy this. So, so I'm spending my time in what I think is both important and enjoyable ways. Very good. I will say goodbye and keep precogging.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Murray.
Thank you.